Vancouver.mediacoop.ca.
Nation. My work with Sinixt Nation began in 1990 when I was called forward by our matriarch, Eva Orr, to repatriate 6 ancestral remains that were dug up in our territory and brought to the Royal British Columbia Museum in Victoria. I got involved. I've been an activist all of my adult life, and I see that there are some lifelong activists around this room, so I know you know how hard this path is to walk. And it's really seems to me a lot harder to walk when you're standing on your home ground. And even though this is all our home, and yes, this land belongs, I've heard it said, this land belongs to us, but I have the opposite view. We belong to this land. This land owns us. And it is this land that dictates our lives. It is this land that tells us how to behave. It is this land that tells us how to conduct ourselves. It is this land that lays out the laws for everything. And that's what our elders said to us. When these first 6 remains were discovered, we have a law. The law, the cultural law is, when you're done with this, it has to go back. When the ancestors were dug up and laid out on the shelves of the Royal British Columbia Museum, they were caused to break the law. Now, they can't sit up and tell the curator, hey man, you're making me break the law. It becomes the responsibility of the descendants to assist the ancestors in upholding the cultural law of returning to the earth. In 1990, we brought those first 6 ancestral remains home. The first ancestral remains to be repatriated and reburied in Canada. Since that time, we have brought back 61 ancestors and reburied them. Where we have reburied them is on Perry's Ridge. We have, and they started occupying before I got there, the Valley side. Gordon Mose here was an archaeologist who did an archaeological dig on DJQJ1, which is our occupation site, and this is an oxymoron, by the way. It is the longest peaceful Indian occupation of government land in the history of Canada. So we have occupied that ground since they came and plowed our ancestors out of it, since they have destroyed a swath of our heritage site at Valican with a road building. I came on scene in 1990 to assist with the repatriation of remains, and haven't been allowed to leave. The ancestors tell you when you get to stay and when you get to go, and I've seen lots of people go, and I've seen lots of people get pulled by their ears and stuck there. I was one of them. Now, you've seen Perry's Ridge. In 1956, my people were declared extinct by the federal government of Canada just prior to the signing of the Columbia River Treaty between the United States and Canada. Obviously, Canada did not want to mitigate any of the losses that were going to happen with the damming of the Columbia River. We are the Sinixt. We are the people on the Columbia River system in Canada, the only Indians on the Columbia River in Canada. So you see, they didn't want to mitigate any of those losses. They didn't want to mitigate the loss of Andromeda salmon with the building of the Grand Coulee Dam or any of the other losses, the floods, and the continued damming. The Columbia River system is the most dammed body of water on this continent. Something like 413 dams on the Columbia River and its tributaries. That's a lot of cholesterol in that artery. Now, the reason that our territory is so important is because it represents 30 to 35% of all the potable groundwater left on this continent. We believe that we hold a sacred responsibility, not just to our people, not just to the human race, but to all beings that exist, existed, and will exist in our Tumhula, our territory. Now, we no longer have Andromeda salmon. We have had, we're not really sure right now, but it went from 35 to 38, and I think there was a documented roadkill of our caribou tribal members in the South Selkirk herd. So they have driven one of our main, thank you very much, one of our main tribal, who we belong to and they belong to us, our caribou tribal members, to near extinction. We are trying to preserve Perry's Ridge also as a corridor for bringing back the caribou. Perry's Ridge represents a lot of things. It represents a lot of possibilities. It is a green island in a sea of destruction. The surrounding slopes are hammered with clear cuts and destruction and mining. Everything below us, trail is about a 40-minute, 50-minute drive from our occupation camp, and everything below trail is completely destroyed because of Cominco, which is a smeltering, what do you call it? It's
cancer.
Lead, it's
Cancer.
it's a big processing, mining processing place that takes zinc, heavy metals, et cetera, et cetera. It's a smeltering plant on the Columbia River. It dumped all of its waste into the Columbia River, dumped heavy metals, so everything below trail is gone. Everything below trail is gone. It will take, who knows how many lifetimes, generations, for the heavy metals to leach out of the sand. Looks real pretty though, those heavy metals in the sands on the Columbia River. It's kind of a deadly. At one point, Celgar, which is the pulp processing plant at Castlegar, above Cominco, was dumping chlorine in its bleaching processes into the Columbia River. They were dredging the Columbia River for fiber matting every 6 weeks or so, because that's how much fiber they were releasing into the Columbia River. When chlorine was going down, being flushed out of Selgar, it was picking up the heavy metals as it passed Kaminko and was, excuse me. Chlorine acts like a magnet to heavy metals. So as the chlorine molecules passed Kaminko and along the Columbia River system, the chlorine attached the heavy metal compounds to it and became one of the most toxic substances known to man, chlorine heavy metal compounds, which were studied by Dr. Edward Brock and have been known to cause high levels of birth defects and those kinds of things. They have since stated that the chlorine emissions out of Selgar have ceased, and their whitening agents are supposed to be completely safe, if you can believe that. But there are still, even though Kaminko is to have cleaned up its emissions, just recently, 2 months ago, was it, that they flushed down, had an accidental spill of mercury. So we have some real challenges in our area around environmental issues. Now this is downstream. Where Selgar sits, that mill is just right at Castlegar. That dams the Columbia River and forms the Arrow Lakes. That has caused of course, behind the dam, they raise the water, and 90 to 98% of our heritage sites, archaeological heritage sites, are drowned, scrubbed from the land. So our historical record of who we are archaeologically, our evidence, totally destroyed. It's being scrubbed from the land. I forget how many feet when they flush the water up and down. It continues to scrub. All of these artifacts flush out of the soil. And because people, it's not against the law then for people to go out and gather the artifacts of my people. We have people with thousands of artifacts in their collections, but it's no longer evidence. It can no longer be considered the evidence of our people existing in this area. So on Perry's Ridge, right where the blockade happened, you saw the blockade in the film in 1997. We recently put a blockade up because they want to commit 4 cut blocks right above that road, and those 4 cut blocks are basically to build a road, go in, clear cut these areas, even though they don't call them clear cuts because they're going to leave 4, 6 trees standing in a cut block, and threaten to destroy through sedimentation, habitat. Well, of course, the logging will destroy habitat for a western toad known to inhabit that area, which is a blue listed species. We have a blue listed little sculpin in the Slocan River that because of the sedimentation from logging will suffer. When you build a road and you log and sedimentation begins leaching into the water system, it doesn't happen in one flush. Sedimentation is an ongoing process that could last over a period of years. It braids streams. It continues to impact the habitat of fisheries as it continues to remain in that system. So that little sculpin wouldn't just be hammered once with sedimentation. It would be hammered again and again and again, and who knows if it could survive. Also, just below where those cut blocks will happen is a place called Lemon Creek, which is an archaeological site. The first time they dug there was in 2000. Ian Kite, who was with Notre Dame, and Bill Prentice, who was with University of Montana, came and did a dig, and the two lead consults on that dig were my mother and Bob's mother, Eva, who are now on the other side. So they came and did another dig in 2009, and so Bob and I were the lead consults on that dig. They discovered a pit house in the Fraser Valley that they thought was the oldest archaeological site, pit house site documented. That was discovered, what, 2005?
1991 was the dig.
You?
Yeah.
Okay. And it's 23 meters. About 23 meters. They discovered in the 2009 dig at Lemon Creek a 23-meter pit that predates that find from 1 to 1,500 years. So those pit houses, that archaeological evidence damaged by sedimentation from logging and road building, and the road that you saw that was blockaded in 97, damage, and the archaeologist who's digging there. And this is kind of interesting. The archaeologist who's digging there was the student field assistant in 2000. When the dig came back in 2009, he came back as the lead prop from Hamilton College in New York. So it is not only, from student to professor, but it's also multi-generational consults on that particular dig. Nathan Goodale, who is that, was the lead to that archaeological dig, is planning on coming back this coming summer and will continue those studies because there is such a threat that evidence is, there's a couple of sites we're not going to be able to save because of the sedimentation. Like I said, when you scrub 98% of your archaeological evidence from the landscape, the sites that remain become much more valuable and important in terms of documenting the evidence that, so this is critical in terms of what's going on. Now, where are we at today? In 2008, the Sinixt, an extincted nation, filed a land claim for our territory. In the meantime, the treaty process that was discussed earlier, and we have put both the BC Treaty Commission and the federal treaty commissions on notice and said, you cannot settle or allow anybody else to claim our territory. But you see, the Treaty Commission are a bunch of sneaky, greedy, government, colonial, they're trying to get us by making it brown on brown. So they have required the Indians involved in the treaty process, the Okanogans and the Tanaha, and at one time the Sawapmiks were also involved in the treaty process. They're not anymore, but the treaty commissions are requiring the Tanaha and the Okanagan to claim our traditional territory and to collude in an act of genocide against my people. And the then chief, Sophie Pierre of the Tanaha, is now the treaty commissioner in a real conflict of interest in terms of what they're trying to do to my people. So, in that true fashion, they have now engaged Okanagan Nation Alliance and Colville Confederated Tribes to intervene on this legal case. And the legal case is we filed a land claim in 2008. We have requested consultation on Perry's Ridge. I think the first letter was dated in 1995. We have asked and asked and asked for consultation from the Ministry of Forests on our Tumhula. They are obligated, if you file a land claim and you can't really file frivolous land claims, you are afforded protections under Section 35 of the Constitution that they are required to consult you. So we meet that test, you see, but BC Timber Sales is contesting, and because you see that I think the cut blocks that are in question were put up for bid and closed in October. Was it September? Right. But the first one closed in September or October? September. And we thought we were going to have a period of time until our ridge went on bid again. But the ministry turned right around. There was no bids on those cut blocks. The ministry turned right around, put those bids back up for bid, and Sunshine Logging bid on those 4 cut blocks and was granted a timber license for those 4 cut blocks. We went and blockaded the road that they were going to up beyond where you see the road that was blockaded. There's going to build a road up in there to get to the first 2 cut blocks this winter, and then possibly the next 2 cut blocks next year. So summer or whatever. But we had a financial analysis done by Trevor Jones. They're going to lose. The ministry is going to lose something like 2-point-something million.
Well, this was in 2000.
Oh.
They were going to lose $2.25 million by logging the entire ridge. What you see there is just 4 cut blocks. But with BC Timber Sales, it's basically citizens who subsidize it, because under BC Timber Sales, the citizens
citizens pay for reforestation as well?
Reforestation. So ultimately, it's a subsidized logging plan. And the value of what is there, as you saw, and those are just four-cut blocks. The ridge goes farther, and so does the planning go farther. But like Marilyn said, it all happened quickly,
And in our first court case, which was in November, Sunshine Logging said they stand to lose $413,000 or $417,000 for not being allowed to go in there and cut this timber. But that's $413,000 or $417,000, and they're only making that because the taxpayers are subsidizing it. The taxpayers are actually paying them to log. So they're going to take out timber, cause irreparable harm, and also on Perry's Ridge, not too long ago, Tony Spreibel, who is from Germany, came, and he's a lichenologist. He came and discovered a formerly undocumented lichen on Perry's Ridge. And lichens sometimes grow in microclimates, and Perry's Ridge is quite unique in that it has what do you call it, a low-hanging, misty kind of, the moisture moves over the land. I mean, you can sit and watch how the moisture in the air interplays with the ecosystem on Perry's Ridge.
Like in this picture?
Yeah, just like that. And it moves, and it's constantly breathing air into that environment. Breathing water, I should say, into that environment, and interacting to make the special microclimates. So, if we have recently discovered the western toad in its habitat there, and have recently discovered a lichen that was formerly undocumented, we are saying there could be other special species on that ridge. My ancestor Eva laid a sacred wish on my shoulders. She said, our women held a huckleberry ceremony on Perry's Ridge. She says, I'm too old now. I hope one day that you can go and find that place and bring the ceremony back for the women, for the people. And so that sits on my shoulders, and who knows if it'll be me. Might be my daughters, might be my granddaughters, but if the land is raped, it doesn't speak to our people like it would if it wasn't. So, those are the kinds of cultural responsibilities that we hold on our shoulders. And so much is lost, so much is gone, so much has been taken away. And we say, you know, if you do this, you'll cause us irreparable harm. If you do this, we can't uphold what our responsibilities are to our culture, to our future generations, to, you know, what our responsibility is to the land. So these are the things that are at stake. And it is interesting to note that the Attorney General for the last 4 days has been trying to state the case that we are not the right Indians. We have no authority to represent the interests of the Sinixt people. Who are your elders? Where are their birth certificates? Where are their genealogies? Who do you people think you are filing an injunction to save this place? So it's been a hard 4 days, and it's not going to end there. And so it's interesting to note that the Attorney General is making the case for sunshine logging. Who knows? Maybe the government is paying for sunshine logging's lawyer. It's pretty interesting how they went from a hometown lawyer in Nelson, BC, to some bigwig Richardson lawyer here in Vancouver. It's interesting to note that the lawyer for Colville tribes, because you see, when we were declared in 1956 and extincted in Canada, we're allowed to exist in the US as one of the, they keep saying 12, I've always known 11, confederated tribes of the Colville Reservation. So we are one of 12 tribal groups herded together, put on the Colville Reservation. It's interesting to note that their lawyer representing Colville tribes in this proceeding is Underhill, who was the lawyer who was the government lawyer against Delgamuukw. It's also interesting to note that he was the lawyer, government lawyer, on Niska. And that he is the government lawyer on McFadden Creek. Marilyn Burgoon here, my neighbor, my comrade, her drinking water comes from McFadden Creek. And they want to divert, one of the developers named Chart wants to divert all of the water out of McFadden Creek onto his property, reintroduce the water into McFadden Creek below his property, and then maybe the Burgoons could have some after that, and whoever else uses that domestic water. And also, that is a fish-bearing stream. And even though the Fisheries, Ministry of Fisheries, or whatever they call them now, who knows, they're renaming ministries all the time, has said you can't divert wholly a fish-bearing stream. They say it's not, their scientists say you can't do that, but they want to do it to McFadden Creek. Underhill is the government lawyer allowing that, trying to allow that to happen. And the Burgoons have held up that process, and they wouldn't allow us to have standing in that issue, the Sinixt Nation, even though we wanted it. So Maryland, basically, McFadden Creek water users are carrying that entire struggle. And Underhill is the government rep against the domestic users on McFadden Creek. Okanagan Nation Alliance, you know, it's really, I could say really bad things about Indian people who do things to Indian people. And it is true. Indian people do really bad things to Indian people. But Indian people do really bad things to Indian people because of the colonial process that have taught them well, who have made them the way they are, who have co-opted them in their processes, and so the real blame has to be put back on the colonials' processes that caused them to do what they do. If there wasn't a treaty process, we wouldn't have a problem with the Tanaha. If there wasn't a treaty process, we wouldn't have problems with the Okanagan's. If there wasn't a potential of money to be had from the resources and settlements, the Colvilles wouldn't give a damn about what we're doing either. So it is those processes that drive the brown on brown oppression, and we can't forget that, even though those browns might really piss us off and frustrate us. We can't forget what processes drive them. And yes, we do need to get along. But you know what? I have heard so much of this, let's all just be friends. No shame, no blame. Everybody's okay. Well, you know what? Everybody isn't okay. Let's stop talking that crap. Everybody is not okay. And when somebody isn't doing the right thing, it doesn't mean they can't turn around, but it doesn't mean you've got to turn the other cheek because, hey, do you know what? There isn't another cheek to turn. When we're standing on 35% of the potable groundwater for this continent, and they want to crap in that water, and that water is our responsibility, we can't allow it to happen. We have allowed it and allowed it and allowed it and allowed it until our backs are against the wall. You can't make clean drinking water from nothing. Clean drinking water needs trees. And as Al Isaacson, the hydrologist, said, water is more important than trees. So, and those trees are in that process, so you can't cut down the logs and think the water is going to be okay. And cut down the logs for 5 cents when the water's worth $1 million. So we all do have to get behind this. We all do have to stand on the realities that we're all facing. And that water isn't just going to be water for Indians. It's going to be water for everybody. But that is our responsibility, and do you know what? It's not just ours. It's not just ours. We all live on this land together now. You want to live here, you are now responsible by the simple fact that you live here. You're not living in Europe somewhere, or Sweden, or Australia, or New Zealand, or where the heck ever. You live here. You have to stand for this place. And right now, the only people who have any rights, and believe me, we have about that much, is us. So if you want drinking water, you better stand behind the Indians. if you want there to be wildlife and amphibians and fish and clean water, you gotta stand behind the Indians because they're not only are they the only ones with any rights, they also have the sacred responsibility and laws passed down by Provincial. And they dictate to us how we must behave on this landscape. And it's pretty obvious that not all of us even know how to do that. A lot of the Browns certainly don't, at least on the Colville res and the Okanagan res and a lot of other reses. So that's where we're at. That's what we're doing. Like I said, right now they're questioning our standing. That's the big thing that the Attorney General is trying to do, is to say the petitioners, which is Bob Campbell, our head man, myself, and his daughter Lola Campbell, Robert Watt, who is our appointed caretaker of our occupation camp, myself as appointed spokesperson, and my daughter, who's also a director in our society, that we don't have the standing to bring these litigations forward. And so that's what we're fighting, and we'll see where it goes from here. When the judge ordered the stay on Perry's Ridge, November 4th or 5th, somewhere in there, that's the first stay against logging to be ordered since 1983, Mears Island. So that's a long dry spell. And of course, the AG's flipping out about it, you know, and BC Timber Sales is flipping out about it because, you know, they want the taxpayers to subsidize the logging companies and maintain the status quo of development in this province. The scarier thing, though, is they will subsidize sunshine logging and the road building and the reforestation with your tax dollars, and that won't be the end of it. Last year, over the landscape, I would say they flew a big thing about a sonic thing or sonar thing or what the heck ever, as big as a football field, hanging from one of those massive helicopters over the land, back and forth, back and forth. And then a little bit later, a smaller one that was probably maybe 4 or 6 times as big as this space, that looked like the Starship Enterprise, to find minerals. So our particular area is very rich in molybdenum and other uranium-based minerals, gold, gems, you name it, it's there, and they do want it. So this is just the first step in getting to a deeper layer of the ridge. And across the way we see landslide, we see where they're starting to just pull the landscape down. So those are that's where we're at now.
And we will be back here over.
Right, the arguments have sort of, we got 5 days, and the arguments aren't going to be completed by tomorrow. So the attorney, the judge has asked that we reconvene for rebuttal the 24th and 25th of this month. We don't, because we're extinct, we don't qualify for any administrative funding. We don't, so we've been doing fundraising through our websites. I don't know if you all got cards. I'll pass some about if you haven't received our cards. We have our stories there, educational materials, and you know we've been involved in this for a long time, and we're not going to give up. But it takes money to fight in court. You know, if it was just fists or pistols, it would be different. But it takes money to fight in court. And when you don't have it, you don't get to fight. You don't get representation. The caribou don't get representation. The grizzly bears don't get representation. The little western toads and lichens and all the things that we're responsible for don't get a voice. And so, if you know any philanthropists, if you know, and it is also about education. It's educating people. We need to support. We need to write letters. We need to bug the government. We need to make sure this story and other stories like this stay alive. We can't let these stories lapse, because when we allow that to happen, we kill the possibilities of a future. And it's very important that we don't do that. I know, that sounds pretty crappy, doesn't it? It's, you know, it's not good news. It's never good news. You know, I'd like to come and tell you a warm, fuzzy story, and I have promised Clarence that I will come back and tell Sinixt stories at the breakfast table that he's going to put up here in the next couple of weeks. I encourage you to go and have breakfast and hear what's going around, and one day I'll be there telling the story of how the Sinixt came to be. It's actually how the Columbia River came to be, but it's our story. It's our creation story. And other stories like the Frog Mountain. Pearson, who is the largest publisher of curriculum in Canada, is posting our Frog Mountain story on the web and will be part of Canada's Indian curriculum. That story is already posted on the web under School District 79, and we have a couple of lessons on there. So like I say, you have to educate. The best thing you can do is to educate children. We're, you know what, hate to say it, all of us folks, old fogies, we're not even worth it. It's toast for us. All we can do is tell the stories to the kids and let the children change their perspective. And the Frog Mountain story did that, and the way it did that is before I heard that story from my elder and I started telling that story, people looked at that mountain and called it Sugarloaf or arid. Now, been telling it to the kids, and it's no longer Sugarloaf. It's Frog Mountain, as it should be. It changes the perspective. When you can look at a mountain and you say, there's a story there. That story tells you how to behave. That story tells you the history of this land. that's how you change how you see things. And children are way better at seeing than we are. And they're way better at making possibilities happen than we could ever be. We have been exposed to the colonial process too long. We've been hurt by it. Not that we can't do what we can do, but there lays the hope in these children. So we have to take care of them. We have to tell them the stories. We have to help them see. And the only way we can do that is by doing it.
I'd like to ask you a question.
Sure.
It has a lot to do with how far we are willing to go to defend our rights. To go to the courts is really good. And I see a lot of things there that I noticed. One of them is the destruction of evidence. That's illegal. You cannot destroy evidence. And from my understanding of what you had said, that's what appears to have been done. Deliberately destroying the evidence. And secondly, a while back, one of my sons, head of the West Coast Warrior Society, blocked the Lionsgate Bridge. Now you know how mad people get when you block the Lionsgate Bridge. We blocked it for 4 hours. And my brother, who was the chief of our nation, was one of them, blocked out. He was very, very mad. And it went really nice. And what we did is we marched through the business district, pausing here and there, to where all of the billions of dollars that are made in this community. We marched through there. Then we got to the Stanley Park freeway. We blocked it off. Blocked it completely off. And that is one method of making the government know that there is a limit as to what can be done. Another one is one of my bros is here, Frank. We're members of the American Indian movement. We had an armed roadblock at Cache Creek. We had 300 guns when we left, and the police were shaking like this when they come to see why we were putting up an armed roadblock. I'm not saying this should be done in your case, in your fight politically, legally, spiritually. But I was wondering if the government does what they do, what do they call it, domain something or other, where they have the right to do anything they want.
Eminent.
Yeah, eminent domain, yeah. Suppose they agree that they're going to log it off as further destruction of the evidence. What can we do to help out when they do come to log? I know I myself am willing to go up, even though I'm getting a lot of barnacles on me now. I would like to go and help out in any way because we have to stand together. We have to stand together. So my question is, basically, how can we help out? Some you've already suggested. One is fundraising. 2, awareness that is speaking to various organizations. And for example, on the 4th and the 5th, there's a big do at Joe Matthias's for 2 days. 2 days is going to be going on. And a lot of these events to make you aware of them so that the message can be got to what you said today. We didn't know about it. We didn't hear about it. You know, we would read the newspaper, there's a court case going on. I read the paper every day. I didn't hear anything about the court case.
To follow up on your suggestion, I would like to just, you've got the paper? Because if you would like to be contacted about things we might organize, my prayer is that the Sinixt actually get consultation and we don't have to do a further action. But, like you say, the chances of justice are pretty hard to come by in the courts. But if we could hand a paper around, if we have an email in particular.
You've got a contact paper.
I also have.
This is what, go ahead now.
I I do have some papers here, and I brought down these posters that you saw here, and I do not want to take them back. So I'd like to give them to whoever would like to take one on your way. It's got this Sinixt Nation name on it, and they have declared it a wilderness preserve. So with or without the government, the Sinixt have been taking the initiative to protect their area simply through declaration, because it is their right to do so. And I would like to thank Marilyn James and the Sinixt. I live in the Slocan Valley, and it is the water that has brought us together to protect what we both really love. And it's been a privilege to work with people of ethics and integrity. So thank you to Marilyn, and thank you to all of you who have come. Appreciate you coming out.
I do want to answer this, and I have another question here. I'm not a prophet. When you start talking about how far you're willing to take things, some people get a little nervous.
Especially the government.
I think people should get ready. Because according to, and we just built a pit house, a ceremonial pit house on our occupation grounds. We have danced in that pit house this winter, and we've been told, get ready. Get ready. The people in the cities are going to have the hardest time. If you're here, get ready. You got to take care of a lot of people, or you got to get the hell out. Find out where your water is. Know where your food is. Get ready. That's all I can say. Get ready. It's coming. And we'll need that. And we'll need healers. And we'll need visionaries. And we'll need to get ready. And that's all I can tell you. And it's not going to be long. It is not going to be long. And like I said, my hat's off to you people in the city, because you're going to have a big responsibility when that comes down. Big responsibility. And make a plan. Get ready.
Thank you.
You had a question?
Yeah, I was just going to ask you guys, did they have a chance to get it up into court for what happened? I'm a Kisan, and we've been fighting for a long time in court, and Al McEachin threw it out, so we appealed it, and they okayed it, the land claim. It's still not over. Still, negotiations still continue. That's why I asked if you guys tried anything. And how we managed to get it to court was fundraising. Like, I make drums, I'm an artist, and I'm a carver. And also Roy Vickers, who lived along us, who originally come from the coastal area at Timsan. He lived among the Kisan for years, where his mother was a teacher. And he came around and helped us quite a bit too. It's well known that a fundraising right here in Vancouver, it's raised over millions of dollars. I made over 28 drums. I was surprised myself. These people come from all over the world there and bought one of my drums, and I didn't even have a painting on it for over $3,000. And the one I painted, they bought way more. I couldn't remember what it was. But I think that the people should get together. Get your people. Do some research of what you need to know. Like, we have boundaries for house story. And the last court case, they allowed us to put up gates to mark our area. That's how we stop the loggers. With the gate in the way, they can't pass that gate. They once
Vancouver.mediacoop.ca